Hello and welcome to today's video. We're going to be covering topics in the Standard 2.2 in 4th grade and under the Study Island lesson called Estimate Solutions. So in today's lesson we're going to be talking about rounding, and in these problems they often don't tell you what place value to round to. So just as a little trick, try starting with the highest place value, round to the highest place value, see if that gives you an answer, and if it doesn't, then work down to the next place value. So, and as you're going through these videos, remember that you should be taking notes so that you have problems and notes to refer back to when you're trying these problems on your own and to study from. And if I ever go too fast, just pause the video, rewind, and then you can get caught back up. And you can even pause at the beginning of the question, work a problem out all by yourself, and then watch the video so that you can check yourself. And if you show all your work, then you can see where it is that you got right and where it is that you might need to study a little bit more. So I'm so glad that you're joining us today, and let's go ahead and take some notes.
Here are some strategies to help you with rounding. So you're going to underline the place value that you're rounding to. So in most of these problems, it's going to be the highest place value, so the number on the left. So here that's the 100, which is a 6. So you underline it, and then you circle the digit right next door because it's always right about rounding. So that would be the tens column. And then you look at that number you've circled, and you have the song. If the number is 1, 2, 3, 4, round it down right through the floor. If the number is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, round it up, it'll be just fine. If the number is 1, 2, 3, or 4, you're going to place a round down arrow pointing to the number that stays the same. So if it's a 1, 2, 3, or 4, that number you underline stays the same. If the number is a 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, you're going to place an arrow pointing that the number goes up. And so that means that that number you underline is going to go up, and everything else is going to stay the same. So here you underline the 5, circle the 7. The 7 tells you to go up, and so that becomes 600. Here you underline the 2, circle the 4. The 4 tells you to go down, so that means that's going to stay 200. Here you underline the 3, circle the 5. The 5 tells you to go up, so that becomes 40. And then here you underline the 4, circle the 2. The 2 tells you it stays the same, so that becomes 40. These first set of problems, we're going to be looking at rounding numbers that are part of a multiplication problem. So to estimate a product, you're going to round the digit to the highest place value of each number. Then you're going to multiply the two rounded down numbers to get your bottom number. And then you're going to multiply the two rounded up numbers to get your higher number. And then you know that the actual answer is somewhere between those two numbers. So this first problem, to estimate the product, we're going to round to the highest place value. So that means I'm going to underline the 9 and circle the 5. The 5 would typically tell me to round the 9 up to 10, but since I'm estimating the product and I look at my answers, that means, and I see that there's a range, it's between two numbers, that means I'm going to be following these steps up here. I'm going to be looking at the number that I round down to and the number I round up to. So what number is 95 between? Well, if I keep the 9 the same, it's going to be between 90. And if I round that 9 up, that's going to round up to a 10. So 95 is going to be between 90 and 100. And I'm going to do the same thing with the 14. I'm going to underline that 1. And if I were to keep the 1 the same, that would round down to 10. But if I were to round it up, it would round up to 2. So 14 is between 10 and 20. So then I just take the two smaller numbers, 90 and 10, and multiply them. And I take the two bigger numbers, 120, and multiply them. And the nice part about estimating is when I'm multiplying numbers that end in 0, I can multiply the non-zero number. So in 90 times 10, that's going to be 9 and 1. 9 and 1 times 10, or 9 times 1 is 9. And then I just count the zeros. So there's 2 zeros here. So I add 2 zeros onto the 9, and so that's 900. So that means this product is going to be bigger than 900. And then I can do the same with the second one. I take my non-zero numbers at the beginning is 1 and 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. And then I count up the zeros. There's 1, 2, 3. So there's 3 zeros in my answer. And that means that my answer is going to be less than 2,000. So that means my answer here will be between 900 and 2,000, which is choice C. So here's another problem. This time I have 3-digit times 3-digit. And so I'm going to underline that first number of each of those problems, and that's the number I'm going to round to. So here I have a 9, and so if I kept that 9 the same, that number would round to 900. Or if I rounded that 9 up to a 10, that number would round to 1,000. And then I do the same with the second number. I have a 5 in the hundreds column. And if I were to keep that 5 the same, it would round to 500. And if I were to round up, it would round to a 6, and that would round to 600. And so here, this is just helping me to find the range, the two numbers that my answer is between. So once again, I multiply the numbers at the beginning that are not 0. So 9 times 5 is 45, and then I count up the number of zeros. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros tacked on. And that's just a shortcut for multiplying numbers with zeros. And then I do it again with my two big numbers. So I'm going to have 1 times 6 is 6. And then I count up my zeros. And here again, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. So I'm going to type right in 5 zeros after the 6. So that means that my answer here is going to be between 450,000 and 600,000, which is choice C. Here we're doing some estimation that's in a word problem. So it says Susie has a part-time job at the video store. She makes between $38 and $45 a day. What is a reasonable amount of money that Susie makes for working 6 days? So you don't know exactly what she makes each day. So we're going to have to estimate about a reasonable amount. So I'm going to take my smaller number, 38 here, and I'm going to multiply it times 6. Because I know that when I multiply 38 times 6, the amount she makes is going to have to be bigger than that. So here, 8 times 6 is 48. I write down the 8 and carry the 4. And then 3 times 6 is 18. Add the 4 is 22. So I know that my answer is going to have to be greater than $228. And then I'm going to do the same thing with 45. I'm going to take 45 times 6. And since that's the most she could make, I know that my number has to be smaller than that. So 45 times 6, so 6 times 5 is 30. Write the 0, carry the 3. And then 6 times 4 is 24. Add the 3. And that's 27. So I know that it's can't be any bigger than 270. So I'm going to look over here at my answers and look for numbers that are between 228 and 270. So 247 is between those two numbers. 283, that's too big. It's above 270. 226, that's less than 228, so it can't be that one. And the same with 221, it's less than 228. So that's going to make my final answer A. So this problem here says Belinda earns $23 from babysitting in 1 week. What is the best estimate of the number of dollars Belinda can earn in 13 weeks? So she's going to earn around $23 each week. So I can take that 23 times 13 to get a ballpark idea of what she would earn in 13 weeks. So first I'm going to take 3 times 3 is 9. And then 2 times 3 is 6. And then 1 times 3 is 3. And then 1 times 2 is 2. And you write the 0 there, or leave it blank, whichever method you prefer. And then you add these. 9 plus 0 is 9. 6 plus 3 is 9. And then you have the 2. So, it's about 299. So if I look at these ranges, the only ones that 299 is between is choice D. So that's going to make D my final answer. Now we're going to be looking at estimating with a division problem. So these steps are going to be very similar to the multiplication, only now you're going to take the rounded down number divided by the rounded up number. And then you're going to take the rounded up number and divide it by the rounded down number. So instead of pairing the rounded downs with the rounded downs, you're going to flip them. And that gives us a more accurate answer to a division problem. So once again, I'm going to try rounding to the highest place value. And so that would be 9 and 4 in these two numbers. And so if I round 900 down, or 911 down, that's going to be 900. And if I round that 9 up to 10, that's going to be 1,000. And then I'll do the same with the 43. If I keep that 4 the same, it's going to be the 40. And then if I round that 4 up, it's going to be to 5, so that would be 50. And so this is when I divide the smaller number by the bigger number, and then the bigger number by the smaller number. So it's going to be 900 divided by 50 to get my smaller number that it's between, and then 1,000 divided by 40 to get the bigger number that my answer would be between. And so that's going to make my answer choice A. This problem is another example of that. I'm going to round to the highest place value, which is 6 and 7. If I keep the 6 the same, this first number is going to round to 600. If I keep that 6 and I round it up to a 7, that means that my higher number here is going to be 700. And then I do the same with 77. If I keep that number the same, the 7, and that'll round to a 70. But if I round the 7 up to an 8, that's going to make it 80. And so I go ahead and I divide the bigger number by the smaller number, and the smaller number by the bigger number. So that means I'm going to have 600 divided by 80 as my bottom number of the range, and 700 divided by 70 as my top number of the range, which is going to make choice B my final answer. Here's another type of division problem in this section, and you can see here it doesn't give you the division problems as part of the range. It's an actual number. So what you can do is you can look at 3 and think about numbers that I could round 94 to that 3 could divide into. And so I'm going to list down multiples of 3. So I have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. And I'm going to want to add a 0 to those, since the 9 is in the tens column, to see if I get any numbers that are close to 94. And so if I look, 90 is close to 94. So that means I can try taking 90 divided by 3. And here, once again, I can look at those beginning numbers. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And then when you're dividing, I have the 0. And I'll just add the 0. So 90 divided by 3 is 30. And if you check that with multiplication, 30 times 3 is 90. So that works out. And so that means that my answer is going to be between 25 and 30, since my estimation was 30 and 30 is between 25 and 30. So my final answer is B. Here's a word problem that asks us to estimate using division. It says Mrs. Johnson has $631 to give out to her 9 grandchildren. She wants to give the same amount to each grandchild. What is the best estimate of how much each grandchild should receive? So here you're dividing the money among 9 children. So I know I'm going to be dividing, and it says estimate, so I know I don't have to find the exact answer. So I'm going to be taking 631 and dividing it by 9. So once again, I'm going to list down multiples of 9. So I have 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, 63, 72, and I could keep going 81, 90 if I needed to. Since I'm taking 631 divided by 9, I'm going to, in most of these multiples, only have the 2 digits. I'm going to go ahead and add a 0 onto these so that'll make it 3 digits to see if any of those are close to 631. And if I look, I have 630. So I can estimate by taking 630 divided by 9. And I can look at those first 2 numbers divided by 9 to estimate. So 63 divided by 9 is 7. Add the 0 back on from the 630. And if I were to check it, 9 times 70 is equal to 630. So it checks out. So that means that my answer is going to be approximately 70, which is between $65 and $75. So that's going to make my final answer A. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you learned something new.